Javon Hargrave out for the season, having surgery. Christian McCaffrey seeking treatment for his injury in Germany. Kyle Shanahan asked about the injury bug that has bit the San Francisco 49ers, and Brock Purdy, on a positive note, answering, I think, one big question about him and his future. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love and appreciate all of our everydayers out there, and welcome to all the new viewers of Locked On 49ers this season. We're here with you every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. All right, Croc. News that broke just after we recorded yesterday's pod. And it was a little bit of a therapy pod. We were talking about how, some big time players weren't really lost for the season. They were going to get it back, some ways the 49ers could improve. Well, it looks like they're not going to get Javon Hargrave back. And this probably explains his play toward the end of the game on Sunday. And it's bad news for Hargrave that he's going to be lost for likely the entire season. And it's a partially torn triceps. And Kyle Shanahan said, quote, "It's a big one. I thought he had his best game yesterday. I thought he was a huge factor, really affected the quarterback in that game. It's a big loss. He's one of our better players." And he went on to say he was definitely going in the right direction and was going to have a big year. And yeah, he had multiple pressures early in the game. It was one of his better games, I thought, early, which is why it was so surprising that sort of viral clip of him later in the game where he wasn't really going all out. And now you start to see maybe why that happened. And it's unfortunate. The 49ers are already pretty thin on the defensive line, now razor thin. And obviously, Hargrave, I think to this point hadn't really been a huge return on the free agent money that the 49ers had spent. I think as a run defender, I kind of expected more from a guy who was a former nose tackle. He's kind of always going upfield, and, he had sort of flashes of being a player that was really disruptive, but then would kind of disappear for stretches, but was really disruptive in the beginning of this game. And he's a player that the 49ers can't afford to lose because of the depth on the defensive line, I think is the biggest thing, not because he's such a difference maker that the 49ers can't get production. It's just that you start to run out of next men up at some point.
I think one of the biggest things that the 49ers are missing is that big body, just guy that can, take on double teams, tired after 2 plays and has to take a break. Where are those guys at to help in the run game? But when it comes to the passing game, Hargraves is a guy that is able to push the quarterback off of his spots, move them, make them a little bit uncomfortable when they're trying to throw the ball. Like, that's what he was brought in to be. He was a double-digit sack guy, with the Philadelphia Eagles. So you were hoping to get that, last year. Decent year, maybe not to the extent of the money. And then early this year, obviously a little bit more of a slower start. Started out great against the Los Angeles Rams, and we saw how that ended up. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think we understand why now it looked like he was loafing a little bit on that play that went viral, and everybody should understand why. Maybe it was a little difficult for him to fight through maybe some pain he was dealing with.
Jordan Elliott presumably will be the one that steps into the starting lineup, a free agent brought in from the Cleveland Browns. He is a little bit more of a big, so maybe the 49ers could potentially get a little better against the run with Jordan Elliott in there. That is his strength. Play him next to Malik Collins. Then you have Kevin Givens, a guy that's been around for a long time for the 49ers, as a rotational piece behind him, but clearly they're going to have to add somebody. And Evan Anderson, undrafted free agent, number 69, currently on the practice squad, could be someone that gets called up. But I have to T.Y. McGill as well as on the practice squad. So one of those guys I imagine would get called up immediately to the 49ers 53-man roster, be ready to go this week. But we're not that far away from October, Croc. I think there's potentially a move that could be made to add depth to the defensive line, as the 49ers did last year in the trade market before the trade deadline, bringing in Chase Young. I wonder if there's another player the 49ers could bring in that regard and, potentially make a difference, maybe even a big impact, maybe even someone like for a team that is a little bit out of it right now, that doesn't look like they're going to have a big season, maybe a player that's in the last year of his contract that used to fill that role for the 49ers. What about a reunion with DJ Jones, Croc? That's the first name that comes to mind because he's the guy that they've kind of had trouble replacing since he left in free agency to Denver in the first place.
Definitely a guy that they need to look into. With all these injuries, there's this video on Instagram, right, where this girl, she has like a dog, and she'll look away, then every time she looks back, the dog is a little bit closer. Then she looks away, then she looks back, dog is a little bit closer. Then she does it again, then the dog is like right next to her. Yeah. That's in 2020. It was way back in my rearview mirror. 49ers dealt with a ton of injuries in that season, and it kind of really just derailed the entire year. And every time I look back, I'm like, oh, it's 2020. And then it like starts to get a little closer. Then I pay attention to the 49ers, watch them. Dang, they lost. Gets a little closer. Dang, Hargrave's injured. Gets a little closer. Then I know we're going to talk about some of the other injuries that the 49ers are dealing with. But every time I look back, I can't help but see 2020. I feel like it's like staring me in my face now. And we don't want that. We don't want to deal with that. That was a tough season to watch. I think it had, aside from just the injuries, I think if Jimmy Garoppolo just played the whole year, it wouldn't have been as bad as it ended up being. And as long as Brock Purdy is healthy, I think you're decent there. But golly, these injuries, I mean, they're just stacking up. And I think realistically, how many injuries can you take and still expect to see the same team that we were expecting to see heading into this season?
Greg Papa, the 49ers radio play-by-play guy, brought up a stat that last year the 49ers had 9 Pro Bowl players, and those players combined missed a total of 5 games in 2023. And they've already surpassed that with just Chris McCaffrey is going to miss 5 games minimum this year for the 49ers. And that's if this treatment we're going to talk about here in a little bit goes smooth for him. He's seeking treatment out of the country right now for his Achilles injury. And Kyle Shanahan was asked about the injuries and if it's kind of similar to 2020. And Shanahan said, quote, "Injuries are always part of the game. We've had to deal with it a number of years, sometimes more than others. I think last year, just mainly with some of our main guys, we were very fortunate that they didn't miss too many games. This year, it's been really totally different to start out. So that's been real tough. I'd like to try to stay positive with it, that with all of them eventually are going to come back. But that probably changed with Hargrave today. That was a tough pill to swallow there. But yeah, we definitely haven't had the luck that we had last year. And when you talk about Super Bowl windows, that's one of the things we talked about last year post Super Bowl, why it was so frustrating, because it was a year where not only the Kansas City Chiefs were a little bit down and trying to figure things out offensively, but that was a year that the 49ers had really, really good and top of the league health luck. And that's not something that's going to stick like that year to year. And now we're seeing it go the other way a little bit. Now it's not quite 2020. 2020 in 2018, you're losing quarterbacks, you're losing maybe your best defensive players to an ACL. Now Hargrave's a good player, but it's not like losing Fred Warner or Nick Bosa. So knocking on any bit of wood I can find right now for those guys. And all the injuries except for Hargrave are injuries that players look like they're going to return from. So it's not quite 2020 level, but the 49ers already have been more injured in 3 weeks than they have the entirety of the 2023 season.
And I think that's scary because, again, you have these high expectations of this team and you assume that, they'll be able to overcome it. But, is that what they're missing down the stretch against a team like the Minnesota Vikings? Is that what they're missing down the stretch against a team like the Los Angeles Rams, where they just run out of gas? Do they run out of gas? Does it look the same if they have all of their guys on the field that you're used to seeing, that you expected to be out there when you started the season? And, for me, very optimistic. I know you and I, we try to be kind of like non-objective with our takes and how we talk, but I am very optimistic about the San Francisco 49ers team that coming to the season. I like this team a little bit more. Do I like them more than I like last year in the sense of opportunity to win the Super Bowl. I always thought your chances decreased a little bit because I felt like the Chiefs got better, but then that's the tough thing. Year to year, different things happen. And right now, the 49ers, the injuries that they're dealing with, we see how things can change really fast. And you got to hope that these guys just come back in a hurry, because we talked about some of these games coming up. Yes, you have the New England Patriots. You expect to win that game just like you did last 2 weeks. You lost those two, but you expect to beat the Patriots. And then after that, you got the Cardinals, and they're playing some pretty good football, even though I know they're 1-2, but when you watch them, it's like they're not bad, and they can beat an injury-riddled 49er team. You see the Seattle Seahawks, I know they're undefeated. We talked about how when you actually watch the games, are they as good as their record says, starting off 3-0, look at some of the opponents, but I will say they're not as bad, and they can potentially beat an injury-riddled 49ers team. So that's the tough thing, trying to wrap my head around, again, the expectations heading into this year, and then what we've seen and how the 49ers have lost. Now you're losing key guys for an extended period of time. Don't know exactly when. Is Debo going to be back for those 2 games? I know he was only scheduled to miss 2 to 3 games. Is it going to be 100% 2 to 3 games? Is there an extra game he might miss? I mean, I was watching highlights of him, and I'm like, golly, like Debo Samuel special. Like, he's just a game changer for the 49ers. You don't have him. Christian McCaffrey, game changer. We don't know when he's going to be back. This is a tough stretch of injuries. And I came on here talking about, I think prior to us hitting record, I was like, I don't want to be doom and gloom or anything and act like the sky is falling, but gosh, it's a little harder to remain as optimistic with these injuries. I mean, it's just tough.
And even if you think you're going to get most everybody back, Hargrave exception in the second half of the year, you still can't give away games like they did against the Rams too. And you can't lose those games on top of others that you might if you start to get pretty decimated from injury in a short period of time. So hopefully those injuries do go well. Hopefully the next one we're going to talk about, Christian McCaffrey's Achilles, goes great. He's going for some special treatment in Germany. We're going to break all of that down and what it hopefully means for his recovery. And we are going to talk about some positive stuff. It's not all doom and gloom in the 49ers because they've got a quarterback. They've got a long-term quarterback, Croc, and he answered some big questions, I think, especially last week with who the 49ers had on the field and how he played. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel because you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets right now, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Just download the FanDuel app, place your first $5 bet, and get $200 in bonus bets. $200 extra dollars to play with on FanDuel, guaranteed. You don't even have to win that first $5 bet. And when you get a hunch in the middle of a game that you need to go check out the latest stats, maybe view some live play-by-play and so much more, you can find it all at FanDuel.com, the same place where you place your bets, the same place where you're betting on the 49ers to win next week, the same place you're betting on the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. Can maybe find some better odds right now if you think they're going to overcome some of these injury woes that they're going with. Tons more to bet on at FanDuel. Every sport, every single game, you can find it there. Visit FanDuel.com to look at all the odds and find all of your favorite ways to play. Download the app or go to FanDuel.com. So Christian McCaffrey, he's dealing with the Achilles tendonitis, and he was photographed on a flight to Munich. And
did you see his face?
Yeah, he's like, damn, I got caught. Yeah, I mean, you got to go more incognito if you're Christian McCaffrey, right?
Yeah, you gotta wear the hat lower, maybe a hoodie on.
Maybe isn't there like some VIP areas where you won't be seen and photographed as much? I don't know. Maybe
wear something to at least people have to question if that's Christian McCaffrey going out the country. Instead, it's like, that's Christian McCaffrey right there.
and we didn't know about any of this treatment stuff at first. Then he's on a flight to Munich, and I'm like, well, it is Oktoberfest right now, so I don't know. He's got the week off. Why not go enjoy yourself? Go put on some lederhosen, drink some ale out of a boot or something. But no, he's going to Munich, Germany. I think the flight was to Munich. I don't know if Munich, I think, is where this doctor is, this specialist that Christian McCaffrey is now confirmed that he's going to see. And according to Kyle Shanahan, he says, I'm not sure what doctor it is. So Kyle Shanahan doesn't even know exactly. This is probably Christian McCaffrey trying to figure some things out on his own and go get some treatment so we can get back. And maybe, the treatment isn't enough that he's getting here locally from the medical staff on the 49ers. So he's trying to get some platelet-rich plasma injections, Croc, PRP, as it is known. And Shanahan said, quote, I know he's going to see a specialist that I believe can help him with his Achilles process. I think he's doing that over these next few days, and hopefully it'll help. So maybe that's signaling that it's not healing the way he wants. And clearly it hasn't been if he's been dealing with it for all of the offseason, and now probably the same injury, whether it was re-aggravated or it's the same one he was dealing with since the end of last year. And it's something that should be, according to what we've heard from doctors, that it's something that rest should have been able to help with already. And speaking of doctors, and this is from Jeff Mueller, who's a good follow on social media locally that talks about a lot of injuries and stuff. And Jeff Mueller, PT, DPT, those are my wife's initials after her name. She's a physical therapist as well. And you know what? I always forget to ask her about injuries. I've got that resource in my own home, and we don't talk about sports at all. So I never, unless it's Giants versus Dodgers, because she's a Dodgers fan, I'm a Giants fan, and those conversations haven't gone well this year either. So I try not to bring any sports up with her. But I got to ask her more about some of these injuries that the 49ers are dealing with. So this is what Jeff Mueller had to say about the PRP and the treatment that Christian McCaffrey is going to get. He said, tendon injuries don't heal quickly or well on their own due to poor blood supply, especially if there are micro tears or degeneration. One key issue with tendon injuries is poor collagen production and disorganization, leading to mechanical issues of the healing tendon, issues with loading, and risk of future rupture. PRP, platelet-rich plasma injections, can provide a high concentration of growth factor-filled platelets that can stimulate collagen production and improve organization of that collagen production, leading to improved mechanical properties. Without help, your body often finds itself in a perpetual inflamed state that continues to get irritated with loading. My guess, and this is his words, my guess is this is where Christian McCaffrey found himself with growing frustration. So McCaffrey flying to Germany because they have the ability to produce higher concentrated PRP, which should accelerate healing, which I would assume he's seeking due to frustration with how long it has taken with these lingering injuries. So there you go. He says, with these injections, some athletes have been able to return within 6 weeks of the injection, even though remodeling is still occurring through up to 12 months. So that doesn't sound great because that's already longer than he's going to be IR, even if it's the quicker 6-week healing process of that. And so this is why Jeff Mueller, that he is, let's see, what's his handle here on Twitter, at JMThrivePT. He says, this is why I'm not viewing Christian McCaffrey flying to Germany as a bad thing necessarily. He's seeking an accelerated healing rate. Best chance of that is in Germany, not the U.S., because of the PRP that he can get there and the higher concentration of that platelet-rich plasma. He goes on to say one more note. Another variable to consider is that a lot of studies discuss strictly PRP injections for non-elite athletes. So the hope is Christian McCaffrey is in the top percentile for recovery. With his treatment in Germany, everyone heals differently, but hope remains. So there you go. That is from someone who knows a little bit more than we do about this process and what it means with Christian McCaffrey going to get this treatment in Germany. So depending on how you're looking at it, good thing, bad thing, I don't know. It sounds kind of bad to me.
I'd say it's a good thing because it is. Again, he's trying to figure out how he can not just get back to the field, but get back to the field and be himself. But there's actually a very, very, very famous person who used to go to Germany to get this PRP treatment. And I'm like, that sounds very familiar. Going to Germany, getting accelerating the injury time and trying to get back out there. Kobe Bryant, just looked up. He did it several times to get back on the court. He was having some knee degenerations, was going to Germany and getting that, and that allowed him to be on the court and be more of himself. This was around 2013. By 2013, he had already gone, a few times, but each time it helped him accelerate the injury timetable and return to the court. So I guess if you are going to go and seek something that is truly going to help you, to have the reference of the late great Kobe Bryant, I think that may help people understand a little bit more what he's trying to do and maybe what he's dealing with.
And if it is that 6 week, then that would put the week 9 bye as a realistic time for Christian McCaffrey to come back from that injury if it takes that long. And folks that hoped maybe that he was going to come back after his stint on IR after week 5, that's maybe a little bit more in doubt now. So it really seems like this is not healing the way he wants, but hopefully this helps him heal and he is back for at least the second half of the year. And by the way, that's also what Kyle Shanahan said about Dre Greenlaw is around midseason is still, that was the latest report, and he doesn't have any new reports on Dre Greenlaw. So, kind of circling that bye. If the 49ers could figure things out through the bye, then get McCaffrey back, then get Dre Greenlaw back, and, Kittle's back to 100% and Debo, and there's not any new big-time injuries, you're feeling pretty good about things. But until that bye week right now, and there's some big-time games on the schedule between now and then, they got to start winning some games and keep their head above water there. And hopefully before they get right and the injury bug does not get worse and it doesn't become 2020, 2018 levels of disastrous injuries for the 49ers.
And not just you got to win games, but man, some of these games, like a loss to the Rams, a loss to the Vikings, it's not just detrimental because you lost to them. They now, at the very moment, especially the Vikings, they own a tiebreaker. So even if the Vikings don't remain as hot as they are right now, but towards the end of the season, they're hovering around 9-10 wins. And the 49ers, if they drop a couple losses or a couple games during this time, trying to get guys back, and then okay, now boom, you get into a groove. Well, you don't have much wiggle room with these losses, and losses to teams like the Vikings, losses to teams like the Rams, it puts you in a very tight spot. So now moving forward, we talked about the Cardinals game, talked about the Seahawks game. Those games are more important than just beating a divisional opponent. You're going to have to start jockeying for playoff positioning. So that's just something that I keep thinking about. You don't want to find yourself the odd man looking out because, oh man, we lost to the Vikings week 2 of the season, and now they own this tiebreaker. Like those are the things right there that make it more difficult. So you got to win these games, especially against the Seahawks and the Cardinals.
Yeah, and not only the head-to-head tiebreakers with those specific teams, but also the next tiebreaker is conference record. And the 49ers have lost 2 games already in the NFC conference. And we went through this last year, and we were talking about the Baltimore Ravens game because there was those games down the stretch, and the Niners were trying to get the 1 seed. And it was like the Ravens game is the one you want to lose out of all these games because they're the AFC team. And it's going to be the same conversation with the Chiefs. Like, of these upcoming games, you got the Cowboys, you got the Seahawks. If they lose to the Chiefs, that's okay because that's the least impactful game you can lose to an AFC team for the NFC playoff seeding. So, and that's why it hurts double to lose those NFC games, especially the Rams game inside the division.
Yeah, they had lost to the Cincinnati Bengals last year, the Cleveland Browns. It's like, okay, you lose them. It doesn't really hurt you as much as one of those divisional games or just conference games.
Right. Next, let's talk Brock Purdy and why he answered some really big questions last week, even though the 49ers did not come up with the victory in week 3. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Is there anything that you've thought about, man, as an adult, I'd love to learn? And I love the wonder I see in my son. It's what makes being a dad so much fun. As an adult, sometimes you don't make the time to learn new things as much as you'd like. And like some of those things you feel like they're lost in childhood, and kids are always learning and always growing. And sometimes as adults, we lose that curiosity. Whether, you want to pick up golf or maybe, gardening, maybe you want to learn a new language before you travel, something like that. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back to school era can come at any age. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your specific schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire. You can get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Croc. It was a frustrating loss, no doubt, for the 49ers in week 3 against the Los Angeles Rams. But one player that played great, and he might have even been a snub. I kind of made a point to be like, you know what? I'm going to give one game ball out to the 49ers, and it's going to be Javon Jennings because of the game he had. And so maybe it was a snub not to give we defended Brock Purdy and said he had a really good game because some people, you know what happens after a loss. Some fans are really emotional, especially immediately after a loss. And like, okay, fire the head coach, fire the GM, fire the defensive coordinator, fire the special teams coordinator, put in the backup quarterback. You hear all those things after a loss. But Brock, and we defended Brock. He was really good. We didn't give him a game ball. We probably should have. And I kind of want to give him a late game ball here because of how good he was. And even yesterday, we were asked the question, has he looked a little bit more hesitant this year? And sometimes he has. So even with Brock not even playing at, I think, a high level as he can, he was still really good in that loss, Croc. And he was nowhere near the reason that the 49ers lost that game. And the really cool part of it for me is that Brock Purdy can come out, throw 3 touchdown passes, no interceptions, put the 49ers in a position to win the game, make the throws he needs to, even though he would like to have a couple of them back, without Christian McCaffrey, without Deebo Samuel, without George Kittle. And we had talked pregame how it was a portal into the, we're looking ahead into the future of what the team might look like with, okay, your number one wide receiver is Brandon Ayuk. All those other guys have moved on. Contracts are up, whatever. You got to pay your new quarterback. Can the 49ers play like that? Can Brock Purdy thrive like that? And I think he passed that huge test. And I think nationally, he probably won't get the credit for it just because, maybe if Ronnie Bell makes that catch and the 49ers win that game, it'd be more of a statement, and the people recognize him around the league. And, he was the last pick in the draft. So it's going to take, people are going to be late on recognizing Brock Purdy. But I think it was a huge test he passed, showing that he can still ball out without the Avengers. Because people say that it's all those are all the reasons why Brock Purdy's been good. And for him to go out there and prove that he can play a really good game without those guys, first of all, might have made himself some money. But second of all, I think he showed that he's up to the task of building a team around him as the leader of the offense.
One thing that really stood out to me about this, and I started to kind of wrap my head around it, I have complained a lot. Like, anybody that's been listening has heard me talk about Brandon Ayuk's usage and how even now, like, there's a different way that Eric Crocker would use Brandon Ayuk. It wouldn't be as just a stationary X receiver. Matter of fact, according to the analytics, he created the most separation of any receiver from the slot position while running routes. So obviously you don't see a lot of that. But me, I would move him around a lot and find different ways to get the ball into Brandon Ayuk's hands. But the reason why I believe that Brock Purdy was able to perform at as high as a level as he did was because this offense is not predicated on one player doing a certain thing. And obviously you have certain guys that have certain skill sets, but there's a lot of plug and play with what the 49ers do offensively. So for Brock Purdy, who is in this amazing system, and this is, I guess I'm calling him a system quarterback, but I don't look at that in this negative way. The system is the system, no matter who is out there. So whether it's Javon Jennings running the route, or if it's Brandon Ayuk running the route, or if it's Kyle Juszczyk running the route, Brock Purdy understands the system to the point where it really doesn't matter who's out there. They just have to make sure that they're where they're supposed to be. And if you're where you're supposed to be, Brock Purdy will get the ball to you. He understands this offense so well, inside and out. The only thing that can throw him off is if you trick him defensively. But if he has a beat on what you're doing pre-snap, post-snap, and all that, which we've seen more times than not really throughout his time with the 49ers, I don't think it matters who's out there. And I think that gives the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, the ultimate confidence moving forward that regardless who's there, the scheme is the scheme, and this guy runs the scheme to a T, and you're going to get those kind of results week in and week out. And I think that's a great thing for the 49ers, because I think if you pay them, but it's not Deebo Samuel out there. It's even if it's Bell. Okay, Bell, just make the damn catch. Yeah, but the fact that Brock was able to find the open guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, was able to find him, throw the ball to him. He's still finding the right answers. I think that speaks volumes to the guy that he's going to be, no matter what kind of talent the 49ers have out there on the field.
Yeah, and so, I said Brock Purdy answering questions. And maybe the question we're asking has been wrong all this time. And, comparing him to other quarterbacks. Oh, where does he rank? Is he 10th best quarterback? Is he 12? Is he top whatever? Is he 8? Can he be this? Can he be that? Is he how good is he versus this guy? Or this guy's better than Brock Purdy? Or this? The question might just be as simple as, can he run the hell out of Kyle Shanahan's offense? And the answer is yes.
Answer is 100% yes.
Yeah.
The only thing now, here's the thing, and again, I don't know how you overcome this part, but when teams have a read on Kyle's system, it doesn't seem like Kyle has a changeup. And that's where the 49ers, at times, when you see things start to get a little clunky, I don't even think that's a Brock Purdy issue. I think that's a system issue. So, he does run the system to a T, and 90% of the time it's going to work. But that 10% of the time when it doesn't work, then what does it look like? Because this team is like, oh, we know you're going to do this. We know you like this. We know you're going to do this. Then it starts to get kind of in this lull in the game or for the entirety of a game. And all of a sudden it gets a little weird. And people are going to attribute that to the play of Brock Purdy, but I don't even think it's Brock. I think it's Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah. And even then, Brock Purdy doesn't get credit for how good he is at making some things happen and making plays, because he does have some playmaker in him, and he'll make not only some good throws, but he can go scramble for a first down and go make a play with his legs too. And so he even takes those percentage of bad plays down even further, because he can go even a little bit beyond just the scheme.
He's terrific. I get asked these questions a lot about Brock Purdy, and I'm like, look, I don't know, but I know he is terrific for the 49ers. And to me, that's all that matters. People get so caught up in this, and is he elite? Is he this? Is he that? Look, he's elite for the 49ers. That is all that matters. I don't think what anyone else, with the talking heads, I see 49ers, they get so upset at these media people, these people on TV. Who cares? All we've seen for the 49ers with Brock Purdy at quarterback is him playing at a very high level. And I feel like as long as you just appreciate that and block out all the other noise because it's really irrelevant, who cares?
Yeah. And as far as paying him, the only question would be, can you find someone else that can run the hell out of this offense for cheaper or better? And you might want to go that route. And it's worth at least discussing. And the 49ers will have to think about that. I don't think they're going to think too hard about it, because you can also end up with CJ Beathard, and you can end up with a lot of quarterbacks and end up a lot worse. And it's not that easy to just find a guy that can come in and run Kyle Shanahan's offense, even though he's found some success with multiple quarterbacks at different times. It's not quite as easy as plugging in a running back, say, to Kyle Shanahan's running game. Sunday, a couple stats here real quick on Purdy before we go. According to Nick Wagner, dropped a couple of really good stats that I want to relay here. Brock Purdy, 7th career game Sunday with at least 3 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions. It's the most of any player in the NFL since Brock entered the league in 2022. Another one here is a good one. 3 times in 49ers franchise history has a quarterback completed 70% of his passes and thrown 3 touchdowns, and the 49ers lost the game. Brock Purdy Sunday. Once Joe Montana in 1985 against the Rams also. And then another time in 1992, Steve Young against the Bills. It was the only 3 times in 49ers franchise history that a quarterback completed 70% of his passes and threw 3 touchdowns in a loss. So even though it's rare, that's good company to keep.
Did you watch Monday Night Football, Josh Allen?
Yeah.
It just looks different. So when people talk about like elite guys, watching Josh Allen when he's on is like, is he not the greatest quarterback I've ever seen? It just looks different.
It's crazy when he's on what he can do, and not only with his arm, but his legs. And I fully believe that that's what Kyle was kind of, because Josh Allen destroyed the 49ers in 2020. And then he went into the draft. And he's like, yeah, I sure would like me one of those. And I think they tried to get that in Trey Lance. Didn't quite work out. Trey Lance, another example. Like you can try very hard to go get a quarterback and not get somebody that can run the offense as good as Brock Purdy has.
Have you seen when people ask somebody like, hey, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, your looks, right? And I always have the question of like, well, what is a 10? Because some people, they rate themselves a little high, and it's like, all right, well, if you rate yourself this high, there's not much wiggle room going up. But what does a 10 look like, right? Josh Allen looks like a 10 when he's on. It's just like, that's a 10. So Brock can be an 8. And it's like, man, that is hella good. Like, Brock is an 8. He is hella good. He just might not be a 10. And I think 49ers are fine with that because he's a 10 with what they do.
Good luck finding the 10.
And good luck finding. You can't find it. It's extremely difficult to find. I would say Buffalo damn near lucked into the 10.
I mean, they just took a shot. It was not that different from what the 49ers did. They didn't spend as much, but they traded up to get a quarterback that was physically talented. And they're like, let's give it a shot. And he looked pretty bad early, and they're like, this might not work. And then it started to work. And so good on them for recognizing a talent, believing in him, and good on Josh Allen for finishing that job and developing into the guy that we see out there, and probably the front runner for MVP of the league after 3 weeks.
I mean, shoot, between him, Sam Darnold, but looking at some of the guys that I think Josh Allen is playing with, like, that's the interesting thing. I mean, he went out there and easily threw 4 touchdowns. They took him out the game. I don't even think he played in the fourth quarter, and he's out there throwing to
Khalil
Shakir.
He's pretty good, man. Don't disrespect Khalil Shakir. Give you a little run after catch. He'd be real nice in Kyle Shanahan's offense. They do have not a first rounder, high second round pick in Keon Coleman. They got a first round tight end in.
I don't think
Dalton Kincaid would be like that league winning tight end guy, and he hasn't really even been a game record yet for that offense.
Coleman, we'll see. I think it's going to be a little bit difficult for him at the NFL level. He'll make some contested catches here and there, but
I think they're using him wrong. I don't think he's a pure outside guy. I'd use him as a power
slot.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people root for him because of his personality. He has a great personality.
He's a fun guy to listen to. Juwan Jennings. I want to apologize officially to Juwan Jennings if he hasn't turned off the pod yet. We know he's a daily listener, as is everybody who wants top-notch information on the San Francisco 49ers crowd daily. I've called him like a tight end, right? The way the 49ers use him. They didn't use him as a tight end. They used him as a straight up, you're a wide receiver today. And what did he do? He went for 175 and 3 touchdowns. So he can do both, maybe. Maybe he's both. But the way he was used prior is like a big slot, and they run the ball a lot when he's on the field. He's a good blocker. And then Debo leaves, and he did the Richie James thing where he went crazy in the Debo role. So maybe that's what Ayuk needs, is to be that Z receiver, be in the Debo role. I think he'd be pretty good there.
I think that was where I would flourish. But then who do you put at X?
Ricky Pearsall. Pearsall might be more of a Z too, because again, that play strength, you kind of want him off the line. You don't want him getting jammed.
They keep getting guys that are Zs.
Yeah, they're all Zs all the time. All Zs and widebacks.
Yeah.
All right, we got to get out of here. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. For your second listen, check out any of the 200 podcasts right here on the network, including the Peacock and Williamson NFL show, daily breaking down the entire league, myself and former NFL scout Matt Williamson. And make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Croc and I back tomorrow. Locked On 49ers.